Good evening and welcome to First Baptist Church Wednesday night Bible study. We're sure glad to have you here tonight. Looking mighty spry. Sure is a lot of young ones out there in the lobby. You'd think something was going on or something. Well, it's not a Awanas, is it? Oh, no. You know, speaking of kids, I was thinking about back during VBS, this one little boy came up to me and I was sitting there with my guitar and he says, "So, Miss Ann, if David was to meet Bathsheba at the shower, would she be Bath Shower? Or Shower Sheba? Or Sheba Shout? Anyway, this went on and on, so, well, Bathsheba would be Shower Bath. Bathsheba, Shower Sheba. Would she be Shower Sheba? That's it. I got it. Only took me 15 times. We can get you all to stand. That's it. Bathsheba, Shower Sheba. I'm good with that. I'm going to hear everybody sing loud now. I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story because I know 'tis true. It satisfies my longings as nothing else can do. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story, 'tis pleasant to repeat what seems each time I tell it more wonderfully sweet. I love to tell the story, for some have never heard the message of salvation from God's own holy word. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. I love to tell the story for those who know it best, seem hungering and thirsting to hear it like the rest. And when it sings of glory, I sing a new song. 'Twill be the old story that I have loved so long. I love to tell the story, 'twill be my theme in glory, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love, to tell the old story of Jesus and His love. Amen. Well, they sound pretty good on that one. Get a little volume out of them this time. I guess since the dove brought back the olive branch to Noah on the ark to tell him everything was going to be all right, since then everybody sort of seems like a dove is a symbol of purity and everything's going to be cool. So Furlong Husky decided he'd do a song about it. Here we go. On the wings of a snow white dove, He sends His pure, sweet love, a sign from above. On the wings of a dove, when troubles surround us and evils come, the body grows weak, the spirit goes numb. When these things beset us, He doesn't forget us. He On the wings of a snow white dove, he sends his pure, sweet love, a sign from above. On the wings of a dove, when Noah had drifted on the flood many days, he searched for land in various ways. Troubles he had some, but he wasn't forgotten. He sent down his love on the wings of a dove, on the wings of a snow white dove. He sends his pure, sweet love, a sign from above, on the wings of a dove, on the wings of a snow white dove. He sends his pure, sweet love, a sign from above, on the wings of a dove. Amen. Have a seat.
All right, thank you, ladies. Open your Bibles tonight to, not Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, chapter 1. Song of Solomon, chapter 1. We're going to take a look at Song of Solomon in the next several weeks, and so you want to be here for this. It is a unique book in all of the Bible. It's perhaps one of the books that is most voted by theologians over the centuries to be excluded from the canon from the Bible. They struggle to deal with it as we look at the Song of Solomon tonight. I was talking to the staff members this afternoon, and there is among theologians, in fact, the commentaries that I use did the same thing. They want to take the Song of Solomon and they want to use it as an analogy for Christ and the church and the relationship that Christ has to the church. And certainly when Paul wrote the Ephesian church and says that husbands are to love their wives as Christ loves the church, and more than once we see the church described as the bride of Christ, I can understand why they want to make that analogy. It also gives a character to the Song of Solomon that is far deeper than what you would see in a relationship between Solomon and one of his wives. That said, there is, and I said this to the staff, there is verbiage that is used in the Song of Solomon that would not be used in a description of Christ and his church. And you'll see that beginning tonight. There's no way around it. Now, there may be times in weeks to come where I will simply skip over a passage and let you read that passage on your own, or I introduced to the idea to Chris earlier tonight that there are certain chapters I'm going to let him teach you so that I don't have to. But I can tell you in those chapters and those verses that I'm talking about, it's a struggle to correlate those with the description of Christ and the church. There's no need to put those in there if it's just talking about Christ and the church. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then God bless you. Solomon wrote 105 songs. 1,005 songs. We find that out in 1 Kings chapter 4, verse 32, most of which we do not have. But this one is called the Song of Songs. We're going to see that in chapter 1, verse 1. That is the greatest of all songs, and I think that's the implication, the Song of Songs. Just as the Holy of Holies is the holiest place, or the King of Kings, that reference in the New Testament about Jesus is that he's the King above all kings and the highest of all kings. So the Song of Songs is the greatest of all songs. That is the implication. The theme of the book is love, and the greatest virtue is love, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, among other places. During his period of skepticism, Solomon wrote the book we just studied, Ecclesiastes. I say he hit rock bottom and then wrote Ecclesiastes. At some point in his life, he had hit rock bottom, had experienced rock bottom perhaps more than one time or in a lengthy period of time after trying everything in the world and finding little meaning in and of itself beyond a relationship with God. He wrote Ecclesiastes, where he said, vanity of vanities, or meaningless, meaningless. It's a phrase he used 38 times in the book. But in his younger days, we project, before he became entangled with the gods of his many pagan wives and all the difficulties in life and the hardships of older age, Solomon understood as a young man the virtues and the joys of being married and of married love. And so he wrote this beautiful book. And it is beautiful. The theme of the Song of Songs, or the Song of Solomon, I see it titled both ways in the Bible or different translations. There are many theological overtones to this book. But the major theme is the excitement and enjoyment of God's gift of physical love, of emotional love, and the relationship of marriage and how those work together. Unlike some religions that condemn physical pleasures in general and relationships in marriage in particular, both Jews and Christians are able to see life and its physical gifts as gifts from God in the context of marriage. This is especially true in the love that a husband and a wife share. Marriage was taken very seriously in the time of Solomon, in fact, throughout Scripture, and it had a significance that we don't really think of here in the United States in the 21st century. That is, marriage, you and I see that relationship as everyone's right to get to be married, or the right to marry or not to marry, the right to marry whoever they want to marry, that kind of thing. And so it's a personal decision that we make that brings our life, hopefully, joy and challenges and children and family and Christmases and vacations and those sorts of things. That's what comes to our mind. That is not the reality of marriage in the time of Solomon in the Old Testament or in the time of Jesus in the New Testament. Marriage was first and foremost seen as a responsibility that people had for the purpose of their community and their country and their God. You and I think about individual, what do I want, who do I want to marry, who do I like or not like. That was not the thinking at that time. It was a radically different culture, and there are cultures like this even today that still exist in India and some other places in the Middle East, where marriages are chosen primarily by the parents. It was that case in the Old and the New Testaments, that the parents arranged the marriages. Likely Joseph and Mary, for example, were betrothed as a result of the selection of their parents. And there is some logic in that, even though our 21st century mindset is horrified at the thought that we don't get to pick our own spouse because we have our rights. But young people, in fact, older people who were married when they were very young, it only lasted a year or two. I spoke to somebody this week who he told me that he got married very young and it didn't last very long. And I've known marriages that lasted only a matter of weeks from members of our church, good people, but they got married young and they weren't ready for marriage, and more to the point, they had no idea what they were supposed to be looking for in a spouse. He was handsome, she was cute, blah, blah, blah. And young people don't have a lot of depth and wisdom about who they pick, but mom and dad, who have already learned those lessons in life, hopefully, could make better decisions And so they did at the time. Right or wrong, it's just a different cultural phenomenon. We see it as a terrible injustice when other countries today choose the spouse for their child. Now, there are abuses of that, there's no question. And we see those abuses on the news, but what we don't see are the millions of marriages that are selected by parents in other countries, many of which go well. And we don't look at our own marriages from our own choice and see the divorce rate and realize our choices aren't really very good either. And so I'll give you this. Marriage is an invention of God. It is a design of God. God created marriage. Our cultures didn't do it. Our governments don't do that. Marriage was created by God. That's clearly in the Bible. But how we go about getting married is not specifically outlined in the Bible. How do you do that? How do you end up from single to married? How do you meet somebody? How do you court one another? How do you become engaged? Those things are not scripturally prescribed. And so you have this very strong difference of culture. That said, whether Mary loved Joseph and Joseph loved Mary was not the first concern of their parents. In fact, in conservative circles of first century Israel, circles, it was not unusual that a bride might not even meet her husband until their wedding day. That is, their feelings were not particularly of importance to people. Their opinions about their spouse was not particularly relevant. The decision had already been made. And the thought of the young man and the young woman was, whoever this is I'm going to marry, I have a responsibility to be the best husband I can be, the best wife I can be, and the responsibility was to God, to country, and then to community. They thought nationally. They identified themselves with their community and with their nation, and they identified that connection between them and their country as a relationship of responsibility. Was it John F. Kennedy that said, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Obviously, that was a struggle then, but we certainly don't think in national terms. We think all about what's my right. I have my rights to do what I want to do, and it's all about me, 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 and my rights. That was not the thinking in the Bible. Okay, all right, I went way too long with that. But what is interesting about the Song of Solomon is, and I'll get to this at the end, these two people really loved one another. There are love stories in the Bible, Ruth and Boaz, for example. So people did love one another. I certainly think Mary and Joseph loved one another, even though they may not have known each other well. And to be honest, when you get married when you're a teenager, how well do you really know the other person? Or frankly, at any age, do you really know those people? And you get to know each other along the years of marriage, and that's what they did. Whether happy marriage or not, then or now, that is discovered. Weddings were joyful occasions that lasted a week. Today, they're 25 minutes long. And in fact, you spend a lot more time at the reception because you get a full banquet meal. That didn't used to happen. Jerry and I we had cake. If you came to our wedding, it was cake and punch. And you had a choice between the good cake, which is the groom's cake, it's always delicious, or the bride's cake, which looks pretty. And so you could have, although both of our cakes were homemade and donated, and so you could have that choice, but it's still just a few hours. It's a 25-minute wedding or 30-minute or 45-minute wedding at the most. and then the reception. But the marriages lasted for days at the time. The Jews also understood marriage in the context, and we think of this as a New Testament ideal between Christ and his church. But in the Old Testament, they saw their nation, Jews saw their nation as married to God or married to Jehovah. We see this in Isaiah chapter 50, chapter 54, Jeremiah chapter 3, verse 1, Ezekiel 16, Hosea chapter 1 through 3. And so for this reason, interestingly, although some of the verses in this book may make you blush or make me blush, they read the Song of Solomon every year on the 8th day of Passover, publicly. God delivered them from Egypt because he loved them, Deuteronomy 7:7. And he was, quote unquote, married to them at Mount Sinai when Israel accepted his covenant. That's described in Exodus chapters 18 through 24. There was a relationship that God had with them, and he wanted them to see it as a marriage between a God and his people, which we also see their breaking of the covenant with God, their idolatry and their adultery of God as a divorce of God in his judgment of them that followed. So reading the Song of Solomon reminded them to love the Lord God with all their heart, which we see, of course, we see in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4, but also in Matthew 22:37, Jesus repeated that. All right, look with me in chapter 1, verse 1. Solomon's Song of Songs, verse 2, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Now, my first thought was, she drinks wine. Oh, by the way, did you know that Song of Solomon it was written by Solomon, but the characters in the Song of Solomon, and I may have skipped over that, and I should not have, but the major characters I haven't gotten to it yet, are Solomon and his bride, his beloved, and the one who spends the most time talking by far in the Song of Solomon is the bride, is not the groom, but the bride. And so you'll hear her a lot more this evening than you will from him. And so she's speaking here. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is more delightful than wine. Pleasing is the fragrance of your perfumes. Your name is like perfume poured out. No wonder the maidens love you. Which tells me that Solomon wore perfume. Verse 4, take me away with you. Let us hurry. Let the king bring me into his chambers. We rejoice and delight in you. We will praise your love more than wine. How right they are to adore you. So unlike modern novels, this book doesn't present an obvious storyline, but it seems to have a definite plot to it, which is discovered as we read the book carefully. The cast of characters is small. This is what I was trying to get to a while ago. King Solomon, the lovely woman who's called the Shulamite. Now the Shulamite, if you wonder why she's called the Shulamite, is a feminine form of the name Solomon. So Mrs. Solomon, who becomes his wife. The Shulamite's brothers are in chapters 1 and chapter 8, and the daughters of Jerusalem, who function as a background chorus, are mentioned in the book, but it is the Shulamite who does most of the speaking. The Shulamite's brothers were employed by Solomon to care for his vineyards, but they put their sister to work. That's the one who ended up falling in love with Solomon. They put their sister to work in the vineyards as well. King Solomon, disguised as a shepherd, will visit his vineyards. He will see the Shulamite, and he will fall in love with her. And we see this beginning in chapter 1. that we've already read, and it will go through chapter 2, verse 7. She pictures their times together as a rich banquet. The next spring, he came to her and proposed marriage. She accepted, but he had to go away for a time, promising to come back. While he was absent, she dreamed about him. Then he returned and revealed that he was King Solomon. They married and consummated their marriage on their wedding night. We'll see this in chapter 3. The remainder of the book describes the celebration of their love as they experience various adventures together. All right, verse 5. Dark am I, yet lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, dark like the tents of Kedar. Well, that doesn't give us a lot of context. We've never seen the tents of Kedar. Like the tent curtains of Solomon. Now, guys, I dare you to go home tonight and tell your wife she's as dark as the curtains of Solomon. There's a reason why his wife is dark, because you generally think of Israelites or Jews as a pretty fair-skinned people, and some of them are very pale white. But this is a people, both then and now, many of whom spend a lot of time outdoors, and this was the case with her. I'll get to that in a minute. Verse 6, do not stare at me because I'm dark, because I am darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I have neglected. So we know that she has her own vineyard. That's cool. But she doesn't have time for her own vineyard because her mean brothers made her work in their vineyard. In a nutshell, she's saying, my brothers made me work outside and I got this tan. The Song of Solomon, which, by the way, I find it interesting that she starts with that. That's her opening. She didn't talk about her hair color or her height or her weight or any other features that she has. Now, we're going to find out about her neck and her nose and some other things later in the book in great detail. But right now, she starts with her skin color, and she says, I'm dark. Now, for you and me as Americans, if we say we're dark because we've been in the sun, that's a good thing because we got a tan. It looks so good. And, of course, we get skin cancer later. But I don't think she's bragging here. I think she feels self-conscious of the fact that she's so dark. So she says in verse 6, do not stare at me because I'm dark, because I'm darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me, made me care for the vineyards, and mine is neglected. The Song of Solomon itself, generally speaking, you're going to see is an outdoor book, using many, many images from nature, gardens, fields, mountains, flocks, birds, flowers, spices, and animals. But most notably, fruit is used and mentioned. And the love of a man and woman fit into this context. It's very outdoorsy. Verse 7, tell me, you whom I love, where you gaze your flock and where you rest your sheep at midday, why should I be like a veiled woman beside the flocks of your friends? We'll get to that in a minute. If you do not know, most beautiful of women, follow the tracks of the sheep and gaze your young goats by the tents of the shepherds. I liken you, my darling, to a mare. He means this in a good way. I liken you, my darling, to a mare harnessed to one of the chariots of Pharaoh. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings of jewels. We will make you earrings of gold studded with silver. Now, what she's doing is she's saying, how can I find you? Where are you at? And he says, well, take your flocks and head to, she's got apparently flocks, head to where the shepherds have their tents, and that's where you'll find me. So the tents of Kedar were made out of the hair of black goats. And she felt that she looked just like one of those black goats, and so she's pretty tan, obviously. She speaks to the shepherd king and offers to go care for his flocks instead of attending the banquet. Otherwise, she would have to veil her face, and then the other guests would take her for a prostitute. So apparently, prostitutes would veil their faces and hang around the tents of the shepherd looking for customers, is what I gather from that. He didn't reply to her question, but the women of Jerusalem suggested she follow the flocks of the other shepherds, for shepherds often pastured their sheep together. But Solomon would have none of her confessions of unworthiness or ugliness because she was so dark. In verse 9 through 11, he extols her beauty and calls her my love. Today, if a man compared his wife or girlfriend to a mare pulling a chariot, he would probably be in trouble. But this beautiful Shulamite woman knew what Solomon meant. No sensible charioteer would ever put a mare among stallions for his chariot, but Solomon was only saying, you are unique, one among many, unique and very special. A noble horse is indeed a beautiful creature, and Solomon was an expert in horses, by the way. They're the famed stables of Solomon, which are highly controversial, but I've been there to those stables in Israel. Furthermore, the king's horses wore exquisite ornaments, something his beloved didn't need because of her own beauty. That was more than sufficient. Verse 12. While the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. My lover is to me a sacket of myrrh resting between my breasts. My lover is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyards of En-Gedi. How beautiful you are, my darling. Oh, how beautiful your eyes are, doves. How handsome you are, my lover. Oh, how charming, and our bed is verdant. I had to look up verdant. It sounds to me like a cross between vermin and rodent, but that's not what verdant means. Does anybody know what verdant means? In your translation may say it more green. Yeah. The ESV, English Standard Version, says it this way, says verse 16 this way, behold, you are beautiful, my beloved, truly delightful. Our couch is green. King James Version also says our bed is green. Instead of couch, they translate the word as bed, but they agree with the word green. The NLT says it this way, the soft grass is our bed. The LSV, Leaside Version, is we got a green couch on sale at Home Zone. Verse 17 says, the beams of our house are cedars, our rafters are firs. So probably, oddly enough, the paraphrase of the Living Bible, I think, gets the ideal best in 16 and 17. And I don't know that I've ever said that before, but I like how the Living Bible says it here. Don't tell anybody, but I like the way the Living Bible paraphrases it. This is what the Living Bible says. What a lovely, pleasant thing you are, lying here upon the grass, shaded by the cedar trees and firs. And so she's gone out to meet her beloved, her man, and they have a beautiful grassy area for a couch or a bed, and as they look up at the trees, that's the beauty of what they see making their house or whatever. All right, that's chapter 1. Ooh, I got through that. Any comments or questions about chapter 1? You're welcome to comment till we run out of time, so I don't have to do chapter 2. All right, thanks a lot. Chapter 2. I'm going to read a section of this as quickly as I can, and then I will explain it. I'm a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. There's the term, lily of the valley. Like a lily among thorns is my darling among the maidens. Like an apple tree among the trees of the forest is my lover among the young men. I delight to sit in his shade. Terry has never mentioned that to me. But I delight to sit in his shade, and his fruit is sweet to my taste. He has taken me to the banquet hall, and his banner over me is love. Strengthen me with raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am faint with love. I like that. Clearly, they're in the dating phase of their relationship. She's fainting because she thinks about how much she loves him, and it causes her to get dizzy. Verse 6, his left arm is under my head, and his right arm embraces me. All right, I won't explain that, but the beloved's reciprocal praise of her lover was also expressed metaphorically. As an apple tree would be a delightful surprise in a forest. If you and I, if we want an apple tree, we plant an apple tree. You don't see them just growing wild in the forest, but that's the symbology or the visual description here. It would be a surprise, a delightful surprise to find an apple tree just growing in the forest. And so Solomon was a delightful and rare find among all the other men. He was unique, sweet, and fragrant, she says. The beloved's praise of her lover reveals three aspects of romantic love that are important to women. Listen up, men. First, she felt protected by him. Sitting in his shade was a metaphor for protection. I thought it might be implying that he's just a really big guy, but it was a metaphor for his protection. Not only in the Bible, but also in the literature of the ancient Near East, that terminology was used. She had worked in the sun, we found out from chapter 1, but now she rested under his shade, which if you've been in the sun in Texas in the middle of summer, that's the first thing you think about when you're in the sun is, where can I find some shade? So she finds his protection and his presence to be helpful to her. Second, they cultivated the kind of relationship that allowed them to know each other intimately. The word taste expressed a knowledge of someone through intimate personal experience. If you remember Psalm 34:8 that says, taste and see that the Lord is good. There's a warning in Hebrews that those who have tasted the gift, and the same terminology is the gift of God, the same terminology is used there. Third, the beloved appreciated the fact that Solomon let others see his love for her. He didn't keep it a secret. As a banner, that is a military standard, was easily seen by the troops as they marched, so Solomon's love for his beloved was easily seen by anyone who observed their relationship. I don't know, ladies, if you've ever had a guy date you and he said, can we keep this a secret? That probably wouldn't go over very well. You want him to announce it to everybody that you are the one he loves. He was not ashamed of her. Instead, he delighted in her, and it was evident to others. One way he showed this was by taking her into his banquet hall in the palace. These three things, protection by her lover, intimacy with him, getting to know him, and obvious displays and expressions of love and affection from him are crucial factors that enable a woman to develop a sense of security and self-worth, and thereby to enjoy a stable marriage. So men, listen up. Protect her. Get to know her. That is, emotionally, spiritually, there should be intimacy between you. And then displays of affection. Not right now, but later on, displays of affection. These are critical factors in a relationship in the 21st century as well as 3,000 years ago. So the beloved had begun to experience these three things with Solomon during their courtship, so it's no wonder that she became faint with love. Verse 7, daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you by the gazelles and by the does of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. It's interesting. Now the command is to the daughters of Jerusalem, to the maidens. In verse 6, the beloved, she anticipates the consummation of their marriage, but she knows she must wait for the right time. That's why she admonishes the women from Jerusalem who accompanied her not to rush into love and marriage, but to wait for the right time. Even Solomon would write in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 8, there is a time to love. She gives this charge again in chapter 3, verse 5, that we'll get to in chapter 5, verse 8, and chapter 8, verse 4. True love isn't something we work up, it's something God sends down within us when we meet the right person at the right time. Verse 8. Listen, my lover, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. Now, I've been multiple times on the hills around Jerusalem. Leaping and bounding is not how I get across them. If possible, I take the bus. But it's interesting, she compares him like a gazelle or a mountain goat or whatever, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. Verse 9, my lover is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, here he stands behind our wall, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. Sounds like a peeping Tom, but that's what he's looking through the windows and peering through the lattice. Verse 10, my lover spoke and said to me, arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come with me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone. Flowers appear on the earth. The season of singing has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig tree forms its early fruit. The blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me. My dove, in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding places of the mountainside, show me your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. Now, the little foxes represent those things that quietly destroy relationships as they destroyed the vineyards, the crops. Foxes get into vineyards and they feed on the grapes, and the keepers must prop up the branches of the grape trees or grape vines so that foxes can't reach them. And so that's the reference here. Now, again, all of this terminology is very syrupy and sweet. I've told you before that I met my wife, Cherry, on the mission field in Hong Kong. I'd never been to the Philippines. I couldn't spot it on a map at the time. This is 1997, a long time ago, but 28 years ago. And I met her there. I came back and we courted through the mail, largely. She didn't own a computer. This is so long ago that we actually wrote letters. Now, we still have them all. You will never see them. They're not inappropriate. In fact, I was a pastor at the time as well, and so I made very sure, and she also was a godly young woman. I told you she had never been on a date in her life. She had never held a boy's hand, and certainly never kissed a boy either. And so we wrote these letters. They were very sweet and very innocent, but they were very much like this in that they were super syrupy. This is why you'll never read them. I said things to her that I haven't said in a long time, and if I said them now, she'd burst out laughing. But in fairness, she said things to me that were pretty syrupy too. You remember that time in your life, young love. I still love her, certainly, and our love has grown. It's just different than what it did at the time. Verse 16, my lover is mine, and I am his. He browses among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee. Turn, my lover, and be like a gazelle or a young goat stag in the rugged hills. True love is an adventure in the country. After the banquet, the king left the scene, and we assume that his courtiers escorted the Shulamite safely home. She went back to her normal life, but her eyes and ears were always open as she anticipated his return. Then it happened. One day, as she was with her brothers, when she was in her brother's home, she heard his voice and saw him coming toward her like a beautiful gazelle or noble stag, bounding across every barrier that stood between him and his beloved. He stopped at the wall that protected the house and looked at her through the lattice window. Then he spoke to her and twice invited her to come away with him. This invitation would be repeated again, or will be repeated in chapter 4, and the Shulamite herself would extend this invitation to her lover. Now, that's chapter 2. I want you to notice two things, though, in these two chapters. Number one, they were in love. I mean, this is not arranged marriage conversation. This is not talk of a stranger. This is two people who met and were crazy about each other. They weren't pretending. They weren't just fulfilling duty to their parents or country to get married and produce offspring to grow the nation. That was their responsibility. This is a genuine love story. Number two, notice they were kind, respectful, and longed for each other. At no point did he or she say, well, you're not much to look at, but I love you anyway. Or you have these terrible habits. You snore, or you're condescending, or you have bad breath. There's none of that talk. After a few years in any marriage, some people are tempted to be unkind and disrespectful, and sometimes you can't wait to get away from each other for a while. But that's not the case with these two. They can't get enough of one another. They're thrilled at the thought and the hope of being reunited once again. Again, the beauty of young love. All right, any comments or questions about Song of Solomon chapter 2? All right, your time is up. That concludes our Bible study for tonight. If you would, take your prayer sheet for the